Hello, I'm here now, and you're there, and we're glad to have you. Thanks for coming back. We'll always be here, never leaving. Dave, thanks for being here today.
Oh, yeah. Good to see you.
In case you don't know by now, this is Downey's Dave Hudson, co-host. I'm Stan Deatherage, host, and this is Table Talk. Today, we want to talk about the 14th Amendment. Lots been said about the 14th Amendment over the years. It's kind of like a catch-all for all unwanted laws and political utterings and movements and motions by certain political parties or party. And it's gotten a pretty bad rep. But the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, and it was done for a certain purpose. It was after the Civil War. All the slaves that had gained their freedom through the Civil War were not citizens of this country, and there needed to be a way to remedy that, and the 14th Amendment was a way to do that. That was the primary purpose of the 14th Amendment. Since then, it's been used for a variety of other ills, and one of course, was giving women the right for an abortion, at the federal level and at state level. It made it legal in every state. That's since been taken away because it was never written for that. 14th Amendment was never written for that. And we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about the political part, the electing people part, the democratic part. You hear we're a democracy from so many people. We're not. At best, we're a democratic republic. I like to say representative republic. And that means we are a republic where you have representatives that you elect to represent you. Here in North Carolina, we have a number of counties. Beaufort County is one of them. We have something called limited voting. It was pretty much put upon the citizens of this county because we did not adhere to some conformity that the Department of Justice felt like we should have. And they used the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as the reason why we needed to be under the edict of limited voting. Limited voting is a scourge upon this county, and ever since I've been a commissioner, off and on since 1994, people have told me they hate limited voting. It's something they hate. They wonder why they go to the polls to vote in staggered terms for county commissioners. And they can vote for 3 or 4, but they only get 1 vote each time. So over a 4-year period, they get 2 votes. So they feel like they've elected 2 people. And that is just not the way it's supposed to be done. The Constitution subscribes to the fact that each person, each seat, you should have the right to vote for that person. It's called one person, one vote. In the early days, it was called one man, one vote. But now it's, I guess to be perfectly correct in a political sense, is one person, one vote. And we haven't had that in Beaufort County. We have 7 commissioners every 4 years, where each commissioner runs in a 4-year term, even though we have the staggered terms. That commissioner, you should have the right to vote for 7 commissioners. I feel that way deep in my heart. Or you should have districts. Personally, I don't like districts. I think districts are a great way to corrupt a body of government because you only represent a certain sect of people, and certain people with a lot of money can buy those seats. And politics becomes way too much an important part of governing in any county. A lot of trade-offs and smart things aren't done. But I like for small counties, such as Beaufort, that we run at large and we represent the entire county. The Equal Protection Clause, the clause that gives every citizen the right to vote and vote for every seat, has not been followed here in Beaufort County. Again, we only get to vote for 1 person every 2 years with our staggered term concept. With that's only 2 votes every 4 years. That's not enough. I'd like to see 7 votes every 4 years. And I'm hoping to affect that if at all possible. Now, the 14th Amendment is an amendment that's so important in so many ways. The amendment was designed, first of all, to give African Americans, black folks, the right to be citizens, and citizens from either birth or when they came into this country, they were considered immediate citizens once they were freed. And the 14th Amendment allowed that. It guaranteed that. It also stipulated that there would be no gerrymandering, either by process or through districts, that would make race a component of why you set up the voting process that one set up in whatever area they were in. Remembering that the states, constitutionally in the United States, set up the way they elect their representatives and the way they elect the president. So, Dave, let me throw the ball to you and see what you've got to say about the 14th Amendment.
So the 14th Amendment is an important amendment. There has always been controversy around the amendment itself. And so that's something that people would, want to look at, and it's a much larger story. I agree on the way that we're doing our elections here in the county with the limited voting is not what I would say is the best solution. Certainly, if I can elect 2 people every 4 years to represent me at the county level, there's a lot of folks that I'm not getting a say in getting elected when there's a whole laundry list of folks I can choose from. Why can I only pick one each election cycle? If we look at the school board, it's broken into districts. I can at least feel like my district is being represented on the school board. But as you said, those in power, corruption, however it works, you have the ability to buy seats or influence seats and all of that, where you really, if your person's not representing you, even though he was or she was elected legally, you still feel like you're not being represented. That's not giving the franchise to the people. We should have the authority to elect all of those who represent us.
Hold your thoughts that you had to offer, but I would just want to interject this one thing. Think about this. School boards, you have 9 school board members. You only get to vote one time every 4 years. Right. Am I right?
That's right.
So Dave feels like he has someone to represent him. Guess what? There's 8 people working against that one representative. Say if the schools are doing crazy things, but Dave's guy is really smart. Dave's in his ear. He says, do this. I need you to do that. What do you think? And he says, yeah, that sounds great, Dave. I'm listening to you. Well, Dave makes all the sense in the world. I think he's smart. His representative thinks he's smart. He's listening to Dave, but the other 8 are not.
That's right.
If you elect someone at large and you get, say, 4 or 5 people that you actually voted for, and you told them you voted for them, and you said, hey, can I help you on your campaign? Bring me your signs. I'll do everything I can to help. They feel a little bit part of your world.
That's right.
And they want to represent your world, so to speak.
I agree. And that's where you do feel represented. And there's big arguments throughout the county when you look at specifically the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes.
All those folks are from Washington and Chocowinity. Nobody's representing us people on the outskirts.
Except for me.
Except for you. And so that's the difference. But if there's more than one alternative, why can't we vote for you and then 1 or 2 other folks who are going to represent us as best we feel we would want to see that happen? And so we're essentially, to some extent, disenfranchised over who represents us because we are limited in how we do the process.
You don't feel like you're being properly represented.
Correct.
Yes. And that, I would like to speak personally from a situation that I've experienced as someone who's run about 8 times now through limited voting. I think this is my 8th time. I've already done a primary, so this will make 8. So there are people that vote for me. I'm their number one guy, and they will do whatever it takes to vote for me. There's other people where I would be their number one guy, but they don't vote for me, even though they wish they could, because they vote for somebody else to help me. It's because they want me to lift me up out of the minority on the commission, because I am a conservative and we do not have a conservative commission. And of course, this is a legislative process where we set policy, budget, run the county with oversight. And if you have a minority of conservatives and you are a conservative, you'd like to see a majority of conservatives. So everything that needs to be done can be done so that the county runs more efficiently and taxes hopefully go down. That they can actually really go down We were more efficient in our governing process. But that is one of the problems. You don't get to vote for all the people you think you need. And Dave, what if you got to vote for 7 people over 4 years? You wouldn't have any problem voting for somebody from another part of the county, providing that they held the same values that you hold dear.
That's correct. I wouldn't have any issues voting. I've always said when you go to the polls, you should be educated on who the candidates are, where they stand on the issues, and then you vote for that candidate that you feel is going to best represent your values, your issues, what you're concerned about. If I see 3 people on a list of 5 that are running for the commissioners, I should be able to vote on my 3 that I think are going to best represent myself. I shouldn't have to narrow it down to one, and then maybe my wife is going to vote for one of the others that we think about.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to see a lot here as well in the county is if you're in a, if you're in a relationship, you have to pick and choose. Do we both vote for the one person or do we split our votes?
Trust me.
And so that, it goes back to your decision, or what you were mentioning. If we know you're representing us, but you need help, now we have to split our own vote, which then splits the votes for those people who we think are the most qualified. And it should go back to who we think is most qualified to represent us, and we have the right to vote for all of them.
So in other words, you and your wife get to vote for me, but you get to vote for somebody else to help me. And in fact, if you still continue to do staggered terms, and I run when there's 3 commissioners running, there's 3 seats available, you get 3 votes.
Right.
Well, what if you really wanted to help somebody like me? You didn't see anybody else that could actually help me, and you decide not to do that other vote. You could do that, couldn't you?
But that's right. And
that would make your vote for someone like me more powerful.
Correct.
Okay. The reason I discuss this is because there are some people think this is like reverse racism, when actually this is to take racism out of elections. Because if you strip districting or voting methods because of race, then we are supposedly a racially colorblind society, and you vote for whoever you want to. Now, I'm going to make an argument that if you had minorities running in a race and they think wrongly that they're not going to get elected because of the color of their skin, which means they're running thinking they're going to get elected because of the color of their skin. We all understand that. Some people say, well, he's black, I'm going to have to vote for that person. Or they're Hispanic, I've got to vote for that person. That can still be done.
Right.
The part where we talked about you two giving up one of your votes to make those 2 votes more powerful, right? Well, that can be done as well for minorities. It would have to be a concerted effort, but if you had 3 people you could vote for and you had 1 minority running and you decided, I'm not going to make the other 2 votes, you would be able to do that.
That's right.
However, if you said, well, I'm going to vote for the minority. We're the same color of skin. I really like this guy, but I like this other fella because he was talking about limited government. He wants to lower my taxes. He doesn't want to close a school in Aurora. He thinks it's a better idea to let the communities keep their community schools because it helps the community flourish. I'm voting for him too. And I'll make both those votes very powerful for these 2 people. And we just won't vote for this other one. There's so many machinations mathematically that you can achieve by allowing people to vote or not vote for the amount of people they wish to vote for. Again, you're making it their decision, not your decision to limit them from the process of voting 1 person, 1 vote for each seat.
That's right. I think that's the more effective way to do it. I think that certainly is the more, I don't like to use the term fair, but I think that really makes it where you are being fairly represented by those you choose to elect, as opposed to you're being represented by maybe 1 person you voted for and the rest you had no say in.
Yes.
And to some extent, because you had to pick just 1. And I think that would open up, it certainly opens up a need to run on issues.
Yes.
It also opens up, I think, more ideas at that level of governance, because you have people who are there to represent more than just a small segment of the population. Because when we look at the number of vote getters that we have out there, you can have your little cliques and groups. We like so-and-so because he's from this side of the river, or we like so-and-so because he's from Washington, or we like, whoever the person may be. They have their core little group of folks who are true supporters, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you have these, to me, it's almost it goes back to who's the most popular person. You've got all these little cliques all together trying to govern, and none of them are working together because it's really just I represent this group and I'm stuck on that. And as long as I do what I tell them I'm going to do, they're going to reelect me. Regardless of if we can lower taxes, regardless of if we can do anything else. And so I think that's where we've seen some stagnation happen in the county is we theoretically have a Republican-controlled majority board, but we see very little Republican governance, I would say, in the county, which is mind-boggling, but it goes back to knowing who the candidate is, knowing where they stand on the issues, and then above and beyond that, watch what they do when they're serving. And if they're not doing what they said they would, you're aware of that. And the next time you vote for somebody who will do, or at least should do, what you expect them to do in office.
What you said, if I could interject, it meant a lot to me, was issue-based elections. Now, I want to give a primer to all you aspiring politicians and you voters in the electorate. An issues-run election means the politicians need to pay attention to the issues, and they need to know the issues, and they need to be able to answer questions about the issues, not say things like, well, I'll get back with you. I'll have to study it. This isn't rocket science. And if you want to get into this game, you should be able to have answers ready-made for everyone. You don't have to make promises, just give answers. Number two, and this is very important, you and the electorate, you need to know what's going on. You need to pay attention. It doesn't need to be, well, he's from my area. He's like me. Well, guess what? He's not going to be like you. Everybody's different. I don't care where you're from, our hopes, our dreams, who we are at our core. We're all a little bit different. We're a little bit like snowflakes. And if you think you're going to find somebody just like you to do exactly what you want, it's going to be impossible. I'm very much like a number of people, but I'm going to do something every now and then that they says, I wish he hadn't have done that, but I like what he does most of the time. And that's just the way it is, because I like to think at this amount of years I've spent in this office and being elected, and I have made my promises, and I do keep my promises. But if some things come up, I have to make a decision that is wise for the people of Beaufort County, and I think it will continue to be wise years later. And that's the way I look at everything. Now, from your area, nobody in your area wants everything the same, especially with all these new people moving in.
Correct. Yeah.
You've got a very disparate education base of folks. And I'm not saying those moving in are smarter. It could be just the contrary. But it is important that we recognize everybody's difference. And geography is not going to make a difference. That's why I think districts are just a poor idea.
That's right. I would agree. The geography in and of itself should not be the determining factor. It goes back to the issues.
Yeah.
What are the issues impacting my part of the county?
Mm-hmm.
Is there somebody who's going to do something to help me with those issues? Fix them, resolve them, whatever the case may be. That person may not even live on our side of the county. They may live on the exact opposite side. But if they're willing to go to bat for what we care about, I'm willing to give them the vote, because that is representative government. That is what I'm looking for. So the geography doesn't necessarily matter. You may have somebody who lives right next door to you who you like them. They're not going to do anything in your interest.
They might not be capable of actually governing.
And
not everybody's suited for this.
That's correct. And that goes to my next piece of it when we're talking about voting the issues. Not only do you know them, you vote them, but I would argue it should be 99% to 1% issues-based versus personality. We shouldn't be electing people based on personality. Oh, I like him. Oh, he's a nice guy. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah.
But
already bought me a beer once.
Right. Something. But just because I can get along with you, or we can have a nice conversation once every 4 years at the polls, or I run into you at a meet and greet or something, that doesn't mean you're working in my best interest. And if I'm not paying attention to what you're doing, shame on me. But the piece is, I shouldn't be electing you because somebody said something nice about you on Facebook, or you shook my hand at a meet and greet or something. It should be, okay, I know what you're about. I know what I care about, and then I make that judgment call. And I vote for those people, not just one, ideally, who are going to best represent that. And I think we would see a lot more of the county issues being voted on, because you'll see what we care about most, whether that be closing schools, whether that be lowering taxes, whatever the issue is. The majority of the people in the county, I would say, to some extent, can agree on a direction we would like to see the county head. Now, not everybody's going to agree on everything, but we should be able to get a general consensus together as the electorate, to where we can say, here are the people that we would like to see. Case in point was the municipal election in Washington. Taxes were a big issue. There was a big overhaul and change in the government at the county commissioner, or excuse me, at the city councilman level, at the mayor level, because everybody said, whoa, the taxes are too high. The government's not right. It doesn't seem to be working. And so we saw the folks go to the polls and vote for change. Now, we've seen a whole lot of other stuff come up since the election because of just politics in general and how things work. I would argue a lot of folks who went to the polls and voted for Washington aren't happy with how it's turning out.
They're not. They're not at all happy.
And it goes back
And they're
to,
not happy for different reasons.
for different reasons. And so that goes back, we have to look at it. Did I vote for somebody who was going to work on my behalf, work on the issues I care about? Are they doing that? Yes or no? Because that's what we're going to follow for the next couple of years to decide, do I reelect them or do I find somebody new?
That's what I follow. And I'll be honest with you. If I support another election where there are different politicians and I want to get involved, I've got to make sure, to my best extent I can do so, that those politicians will be ones that have a history of doing what they said they were going to do. That's very important to me. And it should be important to you in the electorate. And let's talk about the 14th Amendment. And we had the decision come down on the 29th of April. It was Louisiana versus Calais, and where you cannot draw districts or set up a basis for electing your representatives at any level of government, especially those that serve in Washington, D.C., and by virtue of race. In other words, they want to see the districts, if they are drawn, being more compact, that they are not unusually built and drawn, where one district can go from one part of the state to the other. Case in point, Virginia recently went to the polls, and they had a constitutional issue where they only needed 50% validation, and they won that constitutional issue to go to the polls and vote for the redrawing of districts. The problem is that when they redrew the districts, they were really weird, and the Supreme Court of their state struck them down. Case in point, Fairfax County, a county along the Potomac in the northern part of the state, right across from Washington, D.C. and Maryland. Well, that county's been split into 5 separate districts, some of those districts extending 200 or 300 miles further south. So that's just not going to fly. Either it didn't fly constitutionally in the state of Virginia, but it's definitely not going to fly with the 14th Amendment, because these people were being disenfranchised. Use that word. I think it's a good word for this. And equal protection under the laws was not followed. So let's talk about that. We're seeing a lot of redistricting. I think we've always known that the Democrats have always done it. And they've done it for years and years and years, and they've used the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to do so. But now the Republicans are getting into the act, and I think they're doing it because they know if they lose the House for 2 years, all the Democrats are going to do is try to impeach Donald Trump. Nothing is going to get done. And right now in this nation, we got to do some stuff. We have a lot that needs to be done. The government has been shut down by the Democratic Socialists for 80 days, 80-something days. It's still not completely fully opened up. And then it was shut down for the longest period of time ever, but dwarfed by this last period for over, was it 40-something days?
I think something like that.
Yeah, and what they're doing, and they're using that as a tool to shut down the government. I mean, think about it. Homeland Security shut down after all these terrorists have been let into this nation. We don't know what's going on. We're at war and across the world right now. One of the smartest wars we've probably ever been in, whether you like the gas prices or not. We cannot let people who scream death to America have nuclear devices and the ability to deliver them. We can't do that.
Correct.
So this is a smart war from a geopolitical sense, and we'll get into that at a different time. But talk to me about the 14th Amendment and the other states and what you see going on.
Yeah, so the 14th Amendment, that really was, setting up not only, giving citizenship to the newly emancipated slaves is really what that came about as. And there's a lot of other issues with that. 13th Amendment was giving them the freedom, eliminating, abolishing slavery. 14th Amendment is where we say, because you're a citizen, you have the right to vote. You have, all these additional rights. But what we see is it essentially was created because of a power issue in Congress, and the way that it was proposed, the way that it was ratified, is questionable to even if it was constitutionally done correct. So there's always been issues around the 14th Amendment and
birthright citizenship,
and everything that goes along with that. And it all comes back down to voting and how things are going to be handled. And that even goes back to differences in opinion between Democrats and Republicans coming out of the war between the states, and who was going to have control of the government, how the government was going to operate, and how that was going to work. And so that's why, to some would argue, the 14th Amendment was rammed down the nation's throat, and it's not been constitutionally ratified. And does it actually even exist? Well, it does, and we've made a lot of laws and decisions based off of that, and I would say they are good ones, but it does bring into question, how does this work? But going back to it, and especially with districts, when we're talking about giving the right to vote to folks, they have to be able to elect. One, you have to be able to vote, and then for two, you have to vote for people that are going to represent you. And when you gerrymander a district or you draw it all crazy and everything else, and if we look at Fairfax, Virginia specifically, anything north of Richmond, I would call, might as well be Washington, D.C. I would even argue that it's not part of the South anymore. It's the North when you get north of Richmond. But if you carve up or gerrymander a district, that might include folks sitting on the outskirts of Washington with folks who are sitting outside of Richmond, to the west of Richmond, or further west out when we get looking toward the Shenandoah Valley and things like that. Those people are all thinking slightly different. They're going to have different wants, different needs, more than slightly. I would dare say those folks sitting outside of D.C., the majority of those folks voting in Virginia aren't originally from Virginia, and they're there to work with the government or to work in a whether it's a special interest or whatever you want to call it. They're there to get whatever they can get out of D.C. Whereas the folks in the rest of the district are probably Virginians. And I would argue, the way we look at maps, and I always call the Blue Islands, a lot of those folks are sitting out in the red area away from those Blue Islands, so they're definitely thinking different. But when you start gerrymandering or drawing lines to work for your own political gain, that could in and of itself be racist when you look at the demographics of how do we get these folks. If the stereotype is the red folks are going to be your white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and then the blue areas are going to be everybody else. And that's not necessarily true. And it's not working out that way. But that's kind of the idea, and if we draw the lines to get the blue district we want, or we draw the lines to get the red district we want, by default, we're going to discriminate against somebody.
I use the Byron Donalds effect in my discussion of why we need to abolish and end limited voting here in Beaufort County. And I presented that to the commissioners, and it lost 3-4 with the center-left coalition, those who swap votes to share power here in Beaufort County, to a man voting against that and offering no objections whatsoever as to why. Now, I hate to break it up by race, but the two white guys in the center-left coalition said nothing. They kept their mouths shut. At least the black guys expressed why they felt it should be the way it has always been since 1992. And then I offered the objection, yeah, but you can shotgun vote or just not vote for all the people that are running, and you can coordinate that and you can get your guys in. I mean, I wasn't trying to help them, but I guess I was. Things don't change in that regard if you run everybody at large. It's a really great way to do things if you do it right.
Oh, yeah.
But we were talking about the 14th Amendment, the way it originated haphazardly in 1868. A lot of the southern states had not rejoined the Union and had to take an oath of allegiance, and a lot of them hadn't done it yet. I think Texas waited. Did they ever join? I can't even believe. I don't even think Texas ever did.
Yeah, it's argumentative there because the Congress, and when they passed the 13th Amendment, all of the states were considered states, including the 11 southern states that had seceded. That amendment passed, whether it was skin of the teeth, if I remember correctly, I think it was 26 to 11 or 26 to 12, something like that states, but it got enough 2/3 majority to pass. That's right after the war. 14th Amendment rolls around, they couldn't get it through. They couldn't get it to pass with a vote. So Congress then said, by passing the Reconstruction Acts, all of those 11 states are no longer states. You have to change your constitutions, reapply for statehood essentially, and then we'll let you back in, assuming you ratify the 14th Amendment.
So between the 13th and 14th Amendment, Congress passed a law. It became code.
Basically.
And it became almost like a constitutional issue in itself.
Correct. So it is a constitutional issue in itself. They disenfranchised 9 million people in the South, including all of the free blacks that they had just given citizenship to. Theoretically, not citizenship, but freedom. The 14th Amendment is where we bring in the citizenship and voting and all
the 14th Amendment has its many, many, many flaws from the very beginning. So what we're seeing not only was Louisiana versus Calais, very important, an opinion written by Samuel Alito, and it's a very good opinion. The briefs are interesting, and when I read the briefs, it told me, hey, we end limited voting in Beaufort County. That can happen. So that's why I brought it up immediately, and I'm going to bring it up again and again and again. I'm going to figure out some kind of way, maybe you can help me, that if the commissioners won't help, maybe the people can. It's up to the commissioners to wisely do what they're supposed to do, but we don't get a lot of wisdom out of the rhinos, supported by the Beaufort County Republican Party here locally, who govern as Democratic Socialists. And they've done it since they've been up there. And they're going to continue to do it.
It's a new way of winning at the polls. It's terrible. It's deception.
Yes, deception. I'll do everything it takes to be a conservative except vote like one.
That's correct.
But, so what we're going to have are more decisions coming down out of a smart, wise Supreme Court to try to remedy the 14th Amendment. Birthright citizenship probably going to be next.
That's the other piece of it, and beyond the problematic issues with how the 14th Amendment was ratified, it's all of the legal decisions that have been made after the fact that bring those things into question. And a big issue with the birthright citizenship, if I remember correctly, there's only 33 countries in the world that allow birthright citizenship. So it's not normal throughout the world. It's normal here because we've always really accepted it since mid 1800s. Of course, the Native Americans weren't considered citizens until the 1900s. That didn't cover them, and it goes back to a piece of that is of the birthright citizenship is whether you fall under the jurisdiction of the United States or some other jurisdiction. And so that's the birthright issue is just because you are born here, is your parents' allegiance to the United States, or are they here traveling from Germany and they came to Disney World and you happen to be born here and then you're going home? I would argue you're not an American citizen.
No, you are not.
Because your parents had no intention of leaving Germany. They had no intention of becoming Americans. And you just happen to have been born here by happenstance.
And just because you came across our borders illegally and you've set up shop, you're not going anywhere. And certainly Democratic Socialists aren't going to throw you out. They tried to end ICE so they would have no more border control. I mean, no more control of our who's a citizen and who's not. They do not want our citizenship to be an important part of who we are.
Correct.
And it is. It has to be. You don't get to vote unless you're a citizen.
Right.
And that's one thing we're going to have to make sure of. But what you're saying is birthright citizenship should only apply to what it was originally intended to apply to, and that's black folks.
Well, I think it should.
In other words, black folks who were brought here against their will, made it into slaves. If they were born in this country, even if it's just one generation, they're citizens, and they get, if they wanted to, they could have run for president in 1869.
And I think that was the valid point of the amendment, was it was for those folks who were here who were not considered American citizens. How do we give citizenships to the newly emancipated slaves? Whether you're born here, you're brought here naturalized, we're going to give you that citizenship. And that makes sense. Just like I would say birthright citizenship would exist for a child born overseas to two American parents.
Yes.
If I have a child in France, my child is not French. My child is American.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I are Americans. We aren't giving up that status. That would make our child American even though they were born oversease.
Because your allegiance is to the United States of America.
And I'm sure the French government would agree.
Yes.
You're not French just because you were born here. Whatever their laws may be, I don't know off the top of my head. But I would say the same argument would exist here within the United States. Anybody who is born here of American parents, American citizens, that makes you an American citizen. I would argue if you have one American parent, that would make you an American citizen, whether you're born inside the borders of the United States or outside, because you're born to an American citizen. I don't know, or I don't believe necessarily that just because you happen to have been born within the grounds of the United States or within the United States borders, that you're automatically an American citizen without looking at the parental lineage. And it goes back to where does your essentially your where does your loyalty lie? If I'm a Russian operative or a Chinese operative or anybody who wants to come to the United States and have a child, I can have them, and then we can go back to wherever I came from, raise them there, and then send them back to do whatever they want to do and say they're American.
Allowing birthright citizenship willy-nilly to whomever you wish because they may be helpful to your political party.
Correct.
Is a bridge too far for we citizens.
That's what I would think.
And it's no way to run a country.
And it's not to disenfranchise somebody who is truly an American.
Yeah.
The question becomes,
but it does.
Are we enfranchising non-Americans to vote in
which we are doing,
our system?
So if the Supreme Court does what they should do and they follow the complete intent of the 14th Amendment, there's going to be a lot of anchor babies that are no longer anchor babies.
I think so.
You remember chain migration? Isn't that the craziest thing?
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to throw that all out as well, won't it?
I would think so.
And I don't have a problem with people from another country been here a long time applying for citizenship, and if they've been good citizens, maybe even getting an easy walk down that lane. But they're going to have to go down that lane. They don't get it automatically.
And I think we've said that a lot before on the program, is we've got more than enough room in the United States to bring folks in. And there's a lot of people, I think, who are good people, who have the American values, want the American dream, who want to come here for the same reasons that we enjoy living here. But there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
And the wrong way's been done way too much.
And the wrong way's been done way too much. And I would argue that those folks who have come here legally will still tell you, I did it the right way. I'm not in favor of the way that this guy's doing it, where he's coming illegally. If I had to pay my dues, why isn't he? Well, and I think that's fair.
Well, the Democratic Socialists wrongly believed this was going to be a huge campaign issue, so that all people that were one or two generations removed from citizenship in this country would join them because they would have empathy for those folks coming in illegally, and they just do not have that empathy at all. In fact, I would argue that's why Texas and Florida, who have a strong population of people from other countries, and only one or two, three generations removed, while they are now strong red states.
I think so. And I think that goes back to it goes back to the values. It goes back to what the issues are. What are we voting for? And I think we've mentioned it before, but when you rely on a certain demographic or a victim class or whatever you want to call groups of people, and you cater specifically to those small little groups and make big issues out of things that really don't affect the majority, you've kind of gone off in left field. You've lost a lot of folks who are going to vote for you because you're focused on the wrong issues. And when you realize the issues you're focusing on have lost you elections, and the demographics of the voting pool has shifted, and you have to double down on, we're going to go after more folks that we can get to vote for us because we'll tell them what they want to hear, whether we're going to deliver or not. That's an issue. And I think that's what the Democratic Party has seen is for years and years and years, they, have focused on a lot of the social programs, things that are going to benefit the disenfranchised. Not that they're disenfranchised, but the folks who feel like they're not represented.
They've created what we call a victim
that's
class.
Correct. And a lot of those folks, I would say, have seen the light. We've been told that things will change for years and years and years. I mean, I remember for every election I can remember since Ronald Reagan, everything was always, education's got to get fixed. Education's got to get fixed. Well, guess what? Education's worse now than it ever was. Yeah. So that's just a lie they tell you because it sounds good on TV. If you're not willing to do something about it, don't talk about it.
We know what'll fix education. That's a whole nother
issue. But the idea is when these folks have seen there is no change, I've kind of been just spoon fed a lie. Well, I'm going to go vote for the other guy because it can't get any worse. And I think what they're seeing is where we're seeing inroads, even here in North Carolina now, a slight majority, but it is a Republican state when you look at the voter registration, but the slimmest of margins. But things are shifting a little bit, and we have to understand why. And I think it goes back to the issues ultimately. But a lot of those folks are starting to vote the issues, whether it's Democratic voters, Republican, unaffiliated. People are looking at the issues as opposed to the traditional party line, and we're seeing people migrate over. And I think that's a good thing if they're really doing it with the right reasons. And that would be an argument for why when we talk about who gets the right to vote, whether it's we're going to give blanket amnesty to these folks, or we're going to say all of you are automatically U.S. citizens, or you have the right to vote, whatever the case may be. Is it because you're trying to gerrymander without gerrymandering, or what's going on? And I think that's where all of these decisions and discussions we're seeing around 14th Amendment right now are why they're so important.
And we both agree that people should be citizens to vote. We both agree that they should have documentation to show they are citizens to vote. We both agree limited voting is bad because that's Beaufort County's way of disenfranchising everyone.
That's right.
And to supposedly help a specific group, which I will argue it no longer helps. And there are other methods available that can be used so that everyone will achieve here in Beaufort County perfect representation.
Yes.
We believe that everybody should vote as often for as many seats as possible. They should be involved with their government. They should understand what their government does for them and to them as a self-governed society, which we are. And the 14th Amendment is the way that needs to help with that. And it must be corrected so it better represents what the intention of our founders were years ago. And hopefully the Supreme Court will finally work with the 14th Amendment. We're talking 1868 to now. This is 2026. This is a long time to go and not pay attention to something as important as due process and equal protection under the laws for everyone. Now, I'm going to finish this up. We talked about red states, blue states. We talked about race. We talked about all kinds of things. We talked about Florida. It used to be a blue state. Right. Florida is now a red state, firmly red, because they want to see things happen and they want to see things work well. And you can't vote personality. You have to vote issues people out there. You have to vote for people that understand the issues and understand how to govern effectively. And I did mention the Byron Donalds effect. What is the Byron Donalds effect? That is a black man who was in Congress running for the governor of Florida. And in the Republican primary right now, his polls have him about 4 or 5 times over the next guy. He's going to win the Republican primary. He will probably be a black governor, very black guy, very smart guy of Florida. I'd vote for him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he has the firmness of his convictions and he has the power of his intellect. And that's what we need. We need to be colorblind as a society. We need to vote for people who will help us govern. So,
that's right.
You know, if you think this is all to help white people or black people or this colored people or that colored people, it's not. It's to help people, secure politicians that understand the issues and will make things work, because we've gone way too long, 1868 to 2026, without having things work for us. And we need to have everything work for us because we deserve it. Our founders intended it to be this way, and that's what I expect. And you do too.
Absolutely.
And we want you to. We want you to understand that. Well, that's it for today. What do you think?
Oh, yeah.
Did we cover enough?
I think we did.
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with another issue or two, and I hope you learned something. And please, interact with us. Tell us how you really feel. We appreciate you coming, and come back. See you later.